Good evening, race fans, and welcome back to Season 13 of the Attrition Sim Race Campus Oval Series presented by SM Racing Products. Tonight, here for the penultimate round of the season, and almost a little bit of a shocker to say this, but for the first time ever, the league is going to be coming out to the Bristol Motor Speedway here tonight, known affectionately as the world's fastest half mile. Of course, coming in actually slightly above half a mile, 0.53 miles in length or 0.85 kilometers in length for those of you who use that. This is one heck of a track. It's an all concrete surface, which is kind of unheard of in the racing world, but it is also the same as Dover was back at the opening stages of this season. So, pretty interesting to see two concrete tracks make it onto the same schedule. But sure enough, I mean, for those of you who are new to the league, sure, we're using the ARCA car. We're running all over the place at all sorts of different tracks here. But for the 12 seasons leading up to the ARCA car, this was exclusively a short track league. And now we are here at Bristol for the first time ever in this league's history. What a track this is, though, opened up back in 1961. And this track, of course, it's known for its NASCAR racing. It has hosted all forms of U.S. NASCAR divisions. And then for those 2 years where NASCAR decided to pour some dirt over this thing and make it a dirt track, it has hosted various different divisions for the World of Outlaws racing divisions. Fortunately, they decided that they were not going to do that this year for 2024, so now the big question up in the air is, will we ever see Bristol dirt again? But for night, these drivers taking to the asphalt track, or excuse me, I guess the better term to put it is the concrete track here tonight. Second to last round of the season. Coming into tonight's event, Mr. Garrett Hess leads the points standings with 236 points to his name over Brian Sabelski with 170. That said, drivers are making their way on down to the starting line, so let's see how the field shakes up here this evening. Our front row here made up of two rookie drivers here this season. Mike Moultrie making his debut last week at Watkins Glen. Jarrett Boyard, his first ever start here in the league. And it's going to be two good wrench cars making up our front row here at Bristol. Back in position number 3, that's the purple 00 of Garrett Hess in the Everfrost entry. Current championship points leader by a pretty healthy margin. Going to be rolling off in row number 2. Back in position number 4, that's going to be another rookie driver who made his debut start last week at Watkins Glen. That's going to be the 96 Budweiser entry of Charles Gettings. Back in position number 5, that's going to be the ASRC number 93, Mr. League Administrator Jason Gardner, rounding out our top 5 in qualifying here, followed by the 14 of Nico Morelli, last week's winner, back on the road course in that 14 machine. He's going to be rolling off position number 6. Back in 7th, that's going to be the CZ Robotics 24 of Corey Logan, followed by the Street Sim Racing SM Racing Products number 15 of Garrett Streets. Back in position number 8, driver out of Topeka, Kansas. That's going to be the 42 of Michael Sparks, running in a new paint scheme here tonight. Sparks running in a kart entry, a little bit of a throwback to the 90s of karts racing era. That's going to be the number 38 of Brandon Feeney, the driver out of Canada, back in position number 10. So it's actually going to be an all-Canadian row number 5. Then at the very tail end of the field, driver not setting down a qualifying time. That's going to be 78 of Derek Murphy. That's how we're going to line up for this 11-car field. Green flag up in the air for the first time for the ASRC Oval Series here at Bristol. And already you can see pretty crazy fast speeds for such a tiny track that these drivers are setting down side by side for the lead between Mike Moultrie and Jarrett Boyard, your two good wrench entries here. Moultrie in the black one, Boyard in the white one. And it looks like it's going to be Mike Moultrie taking home the lead of the race in the first couple laps. And we have a car around. That's going to be Nico Morelli getting into Garrett Streets. Green flag stays up in the air, and he spins around. Caution flag is going to come out here on lap number 3. Tell you what, race fans, they call it the world's fastest half mile for a reason. 3 laps down in just above 40 seconds before that caution flag flew. Take a look back here. See what happened to Mr. Nico Morelli to bring out this caution flag. Was running back behind Charles Jennings in that camo Budweiser entry. Going down into 1 and 2. Just gets a little bit loose. Tries to hang on to it. Then there's that contact with the 15 of Garrett Streets. And honestly, without that contact, I think Morelli might have been able to save it there. It looked for a second like he might have had it. And then it just snapped out from under him. Let's ride on board here with Nico Morelli going down into this incident. Tries to save it, gets the car nearly straightened back up, and then there's Garrett Streets, and that just sent the balance all out of whack once again. Brings it to a stop on the start-finish line, and that will bring out the first caution flag of the evening here. Looks like the damage isn't anything too terminal on that number 14 machine. Nothing too drastic on the 15 of Garrett Streets either. He's going to go ahead and bring it on down to pit lane, get those pit technicians to take a quick look at it, make sure he's A-okay to get back out and racing. There is some damage to the right front. I don't think there's any steering damage, but I could be mistaken on that. It actually looks like maybe the right side is sunk inwards a little bit, so that might be more catastrophic damage than we first thought. Obviously, this isn't a scheduled pit stop for that number 15 machine, so we're gonna have to take a moment. Let's see how long he actually stays down there getting work done. And the more I look at it, the more it's looking like there might actually be some substantial damage to that right front. No, actually, he's gonna be coming back out on the speedway. Only 31 seconds of repairs. And that should keep him on the lead lap here. And that's probably what his strategy was. Just let them work on it until the pace car comes back around so he doesn't end up going a lap down here. So he will stay on the lead lap in that 15 machine as we stack him up 2 by 2. Already getting ready to go back green flag racing here. Even under caution, these lap times are only 47 seconds. That really is not that bad. That just goes to show, even with the caution flag flying, these lap times are decently high compared to what we've seen just because of the nature of this track. Up to 30 degrees of banking in these corners. Lets these drivers stay nearly flat out sometimes. Green flag back up in the air here at Bristol, and it looks like Jared Boyard was kind of caught with his pants down in that number 97 machine, immediately losing the position to Garrett Hess in the 00. As the entire inside line kind of struggled to get rolling there. Excuse me, the entire outside line there. Had a little bit of trouble getting up to speed. Wiggling just behind Corey Logan and Charles Jennings. Both scraping against the outside wall coming out of the corner. Everyone managing to keep it in the correct direction this time around though. Just behind you see Nico Morelli battling with that 42 of Michael Sparks. Sparks rocking that brand new paint scheme in that 42. Last couple of races we had seen him running in the NVIDIA paint scheme as we see Morelli dive down to the inside. Now running a paint scheme for kart. I gotta say that's a pretty nice looking number 42 as we see Garrett Streets make the move down on the low line. Despite that damage to the right front, I mean, visually it doesn't look very good, but he's still got a little bit of speed to play with. Not anymore. They're going to make contact. Caution flag is out on the speedway for the second time here at Bristol. I'll tell you what, last season's champion here, race fans, getting a little bit of the short end of the stick here when it comes to short track racing. 2 cautions out on the speedway. Garrett Streets involved in both of them. Both of them not really his fault. Get another look down here. Tap against the wall for that 42 of Michael Sparks. That's going to send him back down the track. And the 15 machine, not really anything he could do there. Just a little bit of nudge against the outside wall and corner exit to upset the balance of the car, and just really nothing Streets could done there. Let's take a moment. Let's ride on board with Mr. Michael Sparks here as we go down into this incident. Trying to rip the high line and make it work, and just a little bit too much speed through it. So that's going to be bringing out caution flag number 2, and as much as it sucks to say, it looks like Garrett Streets is heading back down onto pit lane. Not a whole lot he's able to do here, but who knows, maybe the trend will continue, the damage won't be too catastrophic, and he'll be able to come out on the speedway once again. So should be getting the one to go this time by from our flag man. Then we're going to have Mike Moultrie, Garrett Hess, your front row. That's going to be Jarrett Bolliard, Charles Jettings. Currently, right now, only the 15 laps in the book so far, but looks like it is going to be Brandon Feeney so far. That is our biggest mover, up +4. Find him back in the 6th position in that Liqui number 38. Feeney failed to set a qualifying time along with Derek Murphy, so he had to start back at the very tail end of the field. Now finding him up right in the halfway point. But it's going to be Mike Moultrie and Garrett Hess leading the field of green. Then it's going to be Jarrett Bolliard, Charles Jettings. It's kind of crazy to see. In our top 4 right now, we have our current championship leader and 3 rookie drivers who made their debut either this race or last week's race at Watkins Glen International. Green flag up in the air once again, and once again Mike Moultrie gets an amazing start down on that inside line. The outside line's just really struggling to get the power down when we take the green for these restarts. And just like that, Garrett Hess gonna be still holding on to second place. Jarrett Bolliard, Charles Jettings both falling back already. Looks like a decent little bit of room, but it's actually only about 2 to 3 tenths of a second difference. The car scraping against the outside wall. That's Brandon Feeney, I think, that was having an impact with the outside wall. Everyone getting loose out of 4 there. Everyone's trying to rip this high line and just keep the momentum as high as they can. Because, again, 30 degrees of banking up there. You can carry a lot of speed through a corner like that, even if you're only going maybe 400, 500 yards between each corner. Take a little bit further, but look up here. Let's look down. Jarrett Bolliard, our pole sitter, look down at his speed here in that good wrench number 97. Reaching 130, nearly 140 down the straightaways. Having to lose a little bit of speed going through the corners, but it's still practically flat out around the speedway. And that just goes to show the power banking here. Of course, this concrete surface also plays a bit of a factor there. It's got some pros and cons. Has a little bit more grip than what we would traditionally see at an asphalt surface, but also at the same time that grip comes with its own drawbacks in the form of increased tire wear. These tires are going to be turned into absolute messes even in the halfway point of the race. Of course, we've been under caution a couple times now, so that will play a factor in here as well. That won't make it quite as bad. But this track is effectively a cheese grater on these ARCA cars tires. All nose to tail around the field, but we might have trouble further back in the back. Contact between Corey Logan and Garrett Streets, it looks like. We also see Michael Sparks in that 42. Still out on the speedway, still out in the battle, but definitely some front end damage. Both sides of the front end of that 42 are looking a little bit beaten and banged here in that 42 machine. Further up side by side, Brandon Feeney looks to be the only driver on the speedway really trying to make the low line work, and he gets a little bit loose out of turn number 4. Vico Morelli is going to dive down on low, try and follow Feeney through around that 93 of Jason Gardner, and it looks like it's actually going to work out for him pretty all right there. Getting very close together here between these two cars, though. Got to be careful. Don't want to see a repeat of the incident we saw between Sparks and Streets. I say that, though, and despite all the trials and tribulations we've thrown Garrett Streets through, he's currently up into the 8th position once again, so running where he qualified in that 15, which, all things considered, considering he's been involved in every incident so far in that 15 machine, I would say still being on the lead lap, still being in the position where you qualified is not all that bad. That said, Corey Logan's going to make the drive down to the inside there. Not quite going to have the speed to make it happen, though. It does seem like generally the high line is where you want to be. These drivers on the inside line just cannot beat the sheer amount of momentum that the outside line offers. I say that, and Corey Logan makes the pass happen down on the low line in that CZ Robotics number 24. Further up at the front, still nose to tail for our top 4 in the race lead battle. Mike Moultrie has managed to lead just about every lap so far, and already we are a third of a way through this race in just 12 minutes, and that is including 2 caution flags flying on the speedway. And that's just what astounds me so much. Bristol is such a well-known half-mile racetrack that kind of doesn't have anything like it, unless, I mean, the closest thing you can really compare it to is its quarter-mile little brother of Slinger Speedway, which follows the same formula of a very short track with ridiculously high banking for how small of a track it is. And it's just something we don't see out there all that much, and that's why it's crazy to say that in the 12 weeks that ASRC was a strictly short track, or the 12 seasons that ASRC was a strictly short track league before testing their waters with the Arca Menards car, this is the first time Bristol has ever come up in league history. Tell you what though, even with only 11 drivers, the field is managing to put on some pretty crazy battles at all parts of the track. Derek Murphy losing some, or actually getting some ground over Garrett Streets. Garrett Streets look like he's having trouble here. And sure enough, looking back at that 15, more damage to the right side of the vehicle, and he is losing ground big time here. We're only setting 15-second lap times here, so we could see these drivers potentially going a lap down here in the next couple of laps. As we cross the line, Garrett Streets last time by a 16.81. That is more than a full second slower than our race leaders, who are rapidly closing the distance on that 15 machine. And so we're going to see lap traffic be playing a very big, very important factor here at the world's fastest half mile. Still looking down at the battle for the lead here. Mike Moultrie continues to pave the way forward. Garrett Hess, Jared Boyer just behind, and Charles Jettings as well. 3 rookie drivers, 1 championship leader. And a championship leader by a pretty healthy margin at that. Coming into tonight's event, Garrett Hess holds the championship lead over Brian Zabelski, who is not present here tonight, by 56 points. Then from Zabelski, back in 3rd in the overall championship right now is actually Derek Murphy with 126 points to his name. We call that about 54 points back from Brian Zabelski. But then the battle from 3rd on to 6th in the championship standings is actually really close right now, as they drivers up there start to make their way around that lap traffic of Garrett Streets. And then it's going to be Derek Murphy next on the chopping block, but he's got about half a lap to play with here. But 4th on back to 6th in the championship standings, Derek Murphy with 126, Jason Gardner 121, Streets and Young with 116 and 111 respectively. It is incredibly close for the final spot of the podium here in season number 13. And of course, next week, heading over to Kansas for the championship event. First time in ASRC Oval Series history that it's only been an 11-week season instead of the full 12. And all these drivers really, I think, are ready to get this 11th week in the books and get ready for our next season. And of course, as we announced last week back at Watkins Glen International, ASRC Oval Series is going to be going through its biggest restructure, its biggest overhaul since its inception. And next season, we're going to be running a 36-week full-length Gen 4 NASCAR season. The race links will be tuned down a little bit, so to be a little bit more in line with what you traditionally see in the ASRC Oval Series. It's going to be the first time ever that we've seen 36 weeks of competition. And the man behind that decision is going to be that number 93 of Jason Gardner, who has absolutely inserted himself into this battle between Bolliard and Charles Jettings. Side by side across the line as we cross the line on to lap number 50. And Jason Gardner is going to sail around these two cars. And I think really that's just showing how substantial the tire wear is around this track. Is hard impacting the outside wall for Charles Jettings there. Brandon Feeney starting to close in here on this battle with Charles Jettings. As Jettings has pretty much completely lost all momentum he had. He's not going to be catching back up to Jared Bolliard here anytime soon. And sure enough, hard into the outside wall again. That's going to allow Feeney to go around him. Charles Jettings now back to the 6th position in that Budweiser entry. Last week, Jettings brought it home back in 11th at Watkins Glen, just in front of another rookie driver who was unable to tend to here tonight, Cameron Van Dyke. Now, I'm definitely curious to see what these drivers are able to do once we get into that full-length NASCAR season. A lot of these newer drivers here in the field coming in right at the tail end of the final chapter of the ARCA series for ASRC before we step into a car that, while it looks identical visually here on the iRacing.com platform, it is nearly twice the horsepower. So it's going to be even more chaotic, even more exciting than this. And you got to consider, Bristol is on that schedule. So just brace yourselves. You've seen how crazy Bristol has been here in the ARCA Menards car. Just you wait until we go to Bristol in a car nearly twice as powerful as this one. Things looking pretty spread out here all throughout the field as Mike Moultrie pulls away from Garrett Hess, and you see down there that 15 of Garrett Streets. That is a lapped car down there, getting out the way of our race leaders. Currently, the closest battle on the speedway is about 0.8 of a second here between Feeney and Jarrett Bolliard. And that's not really saying much. That's about 5 or so car lengths back. Everyone's had their own little bit of altercations with the outside wall, and that has just completely split the field apart. If you didn't know any better about racetracks, you might assume that this is Darlington, home, of course, of the Darlington Stripe, with how many of these drivers are scraping against the outside wall. Of course, not quite, as we see Charles Jettings off the pace in that number 96. Now it's going to be the 24 of Corey Logan pulling around him. Corey now up +1 from where they qualified here tonight, coming into tonight's event. In the 8th position in the championship standings, Corey Logan, one of our full-time drivers here in the league. But now we see Derek Murphy making a move on Charles Jettings as well. I wonder if Jettings has really destroyed his tires that badly in the number 96 machine, or if maybe... Well, I say that he's coming down to pit lane, so it looks like Jettings really is ready to get those tires off that number 96 and get another go of things. Locking the brakes a little bit going down onto pit lane, but it looks like generally an A-OK entry for that number 96. Now, unfortunately, with the incredibly high speeds of lap times around this track, Jettings is going to be kind of out of luck when it comes to green flag pit stops, particularly because here at this track, you have to make a full lap around the circuit on pit lane in order to actually get to your pit box. That's going to make things very difficult in terms of lap times should a caution flag come out anytime soon. Sure enough, Jettings down on pit lane. Looks like at least 2 tires. Well, we see 4 on that number 96. Yes, we will. 4 tires and fuel to call for the 96 of Charles Jettings. Garrett Hess now going to be the next driver to have a little bit of a scrape against the outside wall, and that's going to allow the 93 of Jason Gardner to start to close the distance. I'll tell you what, I don't know where this 93 got his speed from all of a sudden, but he is setting lap times identical to or faster than our race leader right now. Jason Gardner up +2 from where he qualified, fell back earlier on in the early goings of this thing, but that 93 machine has suddenly showed some incredible speed in the later goings of this race. Going to be pulling up alongside Mr. Garrett Hess here, and it looks like he should be good to get this corner. Going down into 3 and 4, not quite able to clear him. Not quite able to. Still side by side in the battle for the second position, but Hess just not able to hang on to it. Will we see him try and go for the crossover? No, he will not. He's just going to fall back. Let that 93 take on the second position. Now the question is going to be, will we see Jason Gardner be able to catch all the way up to Mike Moultrie? You see him pull away, almost already up to half a second between himself and Hess. I do not know where Jason Gardner got this speed from, race fans. What a show this 93 machine is managing to put on here. Let's take a moment. Let's ride down on board with League Administrator Mr. Jason Gardner. So you can see what a lap around this speedway looks on board one of these Arc Menards cars. As we cross the line here with 25 to go, evidently no one is quite infallible on this track, as we see Jason Gardner having a couple of scrapes against the outside wall, trying to get around lap traffic. And speaking of, here is a battle going on between Brandon Feeney and Derek Murphy. Some of the last cars still running on the lead lap. Currently both about 5 seconds away from our race leaders. As Corey Logan still on the lead lap as well in that 24. Feeney gonna scrape against the outside wall. That's not doing himself any favors, especially here with 23 to go. Feeney, runner-up in the championship last season behind Garrett Streets. Unable to run full-time this season here in the Oval Series. The big question is going to be, what will this 38 machine do in our new season starting off 2 weeks after this? Of course, Feeney comes here to run this league immediately after running another league that generally runs for over an hour. So doing double duty every week, week in and week out, definitely quite the feat for this Canadian driver. Feeney currently running back in the 6th position, up +4 from where he qualified. That's going to be the driver just in front of him, that unsponsored 78 of Derek Murphy. 3rd in the championship standings right now, and currently our biggest mover up the race, up +6, started in last here tonight. Now finding himself running inside the top 5, and slowly but surely starting to close the distance on our qualifying pole sitter of Jarrett Bolliard. Strafe against the outside wall, trying to get around that number 97 machine, but it looks like Derek Murphy has the pace necessary to get around that 97 machine. Looking around the field at the lap times, everyone right now is setting lap times a full second slower than their personal best at the start of today's event, and that is no surprise. The track temperature was over 100 degrees when these drivers took the green flag, and that has done no favors to their tires. You gotta consider as well, currently the only drivers on the speedway they have hit is Charles Jettings and Garrett Streets. And we're not even half an hour into this event yet. It's only been 26 minutes since the green flag flew, and that is including 2 caution flags. Oh no, these drivers are clicking by the laps here incredibly quickly as we still continue to look down at the battle here between Bolliard and Murphy. Bolliard making his debut start here with the ASRC Oval Series tonight. Derek Murphy, of course, pretty long time veteran here. He's been here at least since season 7, probably longer than that here in that 78 machine. Got a couple of top threes in recent memory. Back at the Milwaukee Mile, walked away with a podium, as well as Michigan also managed to walk away with a third place finish in that number 78 machine. Now in the top 5, looking to see if he can't break his way into 4th. Only 13 laps to go here at Bristol. And right now, look at the closest battle on the speedway as we see Nico Morelli be the next driver to make the call to come down pit lane. Side by side still here for the 4th position as Murphy tries to make the outside line work, gets the run, and then just bonks it against the outside wall, and getting ready to be 10 to go here as Murphy finally manages to make the pass. Everyone else on the speedway pretty spread out right now. Mike Moultrie leads the field by a roughly 3-second lead. It looks like Jason Gardner maybe has used up the good on those tires and is not really able to close the gap down. Double high five up in the air from our flagman, though. 10 laps to go here at Bristol. And right now, it's looking like things are going to be putting Mike Moultrie Jr. into the ASRC record book as the first driver to take home the win at Bristol. Of course, can't say anything quite too soon. As we see this battle going on, further behind that is Mike Moultrie Jr. trying to get around that lapped car of Brandon Feeney, and just behind Charles Jettings in that number 96. Multiple laps down here, so none of these 3 cars are battling for position. And the more Moultrie battles it here, the more and more potential that Gardner has to catch up to our race leader. Feeney scraping out the outside wall there. Not quite enough to allow Moultrie to clear him, though. Sure enough, that time by Moultrie's going to clear him as both Jettings and Feeney scrape against the outside wall. 6 laps left to go here at Bristol. A 2.2 second lead for Mike Moultrie Jr. And the high fives up in the air from the flagman. Going to be 5 to go here at Bristol. Mike Moultrie, more than any other driver on this speedway right now, is hoping and praying that the caution flag does not fly in these final 5 laps. All he just has to do is last 1 more minute here at Bristol, and he'll be able to take home the win. Jason Gardner 2 seconds back now. I don't think Gardner is going to be able to close that big of a gap up without some sort of major mishap from that number 3 machine. Catching up to the number 97 of Bolliard, and now threatening to put him a lap down, which is, again, crazy to see, as Bolliard was our pole sitter here in tonight's event. Fastest car, both in practice and in qualifying. Moultrie really having to play really careful here, as all these lap cars are duking it out with each other in front of him. But sure enough, he's got into the safe zone. White flag up in the air. Next flag ends the race one way or another. And with a, call it, 1 second lead now, Jason Gardner in the rear view, but just not quite able to close the gap up. It's going to be Mike Moultrie Jr. taking home the win here at Bristol Motor Speedway. What an event it has been here tonight. And Mike Moultrie made his debut last week at Watkins Glen, finished with a podium, and now in his 2nd ever race with the league, going to be taking home the checkered flag. Alrighty, race fans, don't go anywhere. We'll be right back here in just a moment with some words with your top 3 finishers. Alrighty, race fans, welcome back to Bristol. Welcome back to season 13 of the ASRC Oval Series penultimate round here in the book here tonight. And it's going to be one of our league's rookie drivers here this season, Mr. Mike Moultrie Jr., taking home the win here this evening. Mike, how are you feeling?
I'm feeling pretty good. Pretty decent race. Try to stay consistent, stay off the wall, stay clean, and save tire.
Yeah, you managed to work it out with a pretty solid lead here tonight. In the closing chapter of things, it looked like Jason was starting to make a run on you. Were you starting to worry at all that maybe you wouldn't be able to take home the checkered flag here this evening?
I was more worried about my tire wear. I was saving a little bit. I had a little something left if he caught me. Um, but if he did, it would have been a good race. But that's why I had to get that lead. So if he did catch me, I did have a little bit saved to race with him. But yeah, it was a hard first half of the race.
Yeah, definitely managed to work it out in your favor, though. And of course, not contending for a champion here this late in the season, but coming into a league most of the way through its season, making a podium finish in your debut race, and then taking home the win immediately after that. That's got to feel pretty amazing.
Yeah, it feels good to be back out racing with a good group of guys. I'm just thankful you guys invited me to your league and can race with you guys.
Well, definitely great to have you out here. Always exciting to see new names out in the field, and always exciting to see new names taking home checkered flags here. First time the league's ever been to Bristol, and then next week heading over to Kansas for 150 miles of competition to crown ourselves a champion. You reckon that's a track you can make a win happen at too?
Um, Possible. It's possible. I'm so at that track, so I mean, just have to test and see how it goes.
Fair enough. Well, I certainly won't keep you here all night. You got testing to do. You got a little bit of celebrating to do too. But before you go, the microphone is all yours, Mr. Moultrie. Who you want to thank for making everything happen here tonight?
I just want to thank everybody for inviting me to the league, my team, America Racing, and you up in the booth.
Good deal. Well, thank you for coming out. It's a pleasure having you, and we look forward to seeing you next week at Kansas.
Thanks, appreciate it.
And finishing back in position number 2, Mr. League Admin himself, Jason Gardner. I hate to say it, buddy, but I think you broke out the grip packs here in the last 50 laps of this race. You mind running me through what all went down here?
Uh, just seemed like just about everything. Me hitting the wall, watching people spin out in front of me, wrecking behind me, especially in the early parts of the race. But yeah, this I'm really not much of a fan of Bristol, so immediately I didn't go full sin, even with new tires, which I think might be the reason why I started. I actually managed to finish second because it was kind of like I'm just gonna take it easy, and everybody just around me just starts slowing down, just going up to positions, got up to second. I'm like, wait a minute, I think I might have a chance to catch the leader here and win this.
Yeah, it certainly seemed like you had some speed in the late goings of this. Down in those final couple of laps, you were setting about 2 or 3 tenths of a second faster lap times. I guess the big question is what would have had to have gone different tonight for you to be walking away with that checkered flag?
Maybe if we had like probably about 2 or 3 extra laps. uh, there's there's or probably actually running a little bit harder at the beginning of the race, but yeah, I just ran out of time, and there was just way too much of a gap for me to try to close in.
Fair enough. Still a really solid run here this evening. And coming into tonight's event, you're fourth in the championship stand-ins, and I believe that tonight should actually bump you up to third. So now that's the big question, is next week when we crown a champion at Kansas, I don't know what the math is going to look like. I can't say one way or another on that. But even if you can't mathematically take home a championship, which again, I don't know about that yet, but do you think that Kansas is a track you'll be able to win at next week?
Only time can tell, because I really don't have a whole lot of experience with Kansas. Maybe 1 or 2 races in the Xfinity Cup car. So, but knows, I'm going to try to get some practice throughout the week. Try to get a little better at the track, and come next week, hopefully we'll try to go for the win.
I mean, that seems like solid enough of a plan to me. Of course, before I let you go, though, and start getting ready for that, the microphone is all yours, Mr. Gardner. Who you want to thank for making everything happen here tonight?
Oh, first and foremost, I'd like to thank you for broadcasting this series. You've been broadcasting ASRC for, oh man, for how long now? Now it's been a couple of years at least.
Somewhere up there.
Yeah, and I also like to thank SM Racing Products for sponsoring the series, and they'll actually be sponsoring next season's series. But also, more importantly, I'd like to thank all the racers and everybody who is watching this broadcast. Without y'all, none of this would be possible.
Good deal. Well, thank you for coming out. Thank you for hosting all these events for us to broadcast, and good luck next week at Kansas. It's bound to be one heck of a race.
Yes, it will.
And then finally, rounding out the podium here tonight in the 00 entry, Mr. Championship leader Garrett Hess taking home another podium. It feels like pretty much every race you have either won or podiumed at, and this is not any different here tonight. How are you feeling?
Well, I can't feel too bad. I ran right behind Michael for a good number of laps, and then he just did way better than me at saving tires. Bristol's never been a track where I can save tires. I've always dropped into like the 0% range all the time. Just too much cranking the wheel for me to efficiently save.
Fair enough. Still managing to walk away with a podium here tonight. Should still keep that lead up in the championship standings heading into Kansas next week. So you got that going for you. I guess really next week, even if you don't take home the win, you're still looking pretty good. But do you think that is a place where you're going to be taking home win number 6?
I like Kansas. I like how you can run the top in the middle. I haven't done a 2 lot in the ARC car in probably about 2 years, but I've always liked the track. Winning, I'm not too sure, but I think that even now that Brian didn't show up, I'm basically a lock for this championship. So it's been a real fun what past 10 weeks. Even if I might not win all of them, it's still a bunch of fun to race with everyone here.
Yeah, definitely. Always great to have you out here and putting on a heck of a show. And for what it's worth, I know a couple of weeks we talked about potentially tying or breaking the record for most wins in a season. And unfortunately, it doesn't look like that's going to be happening here this season. But hey, next season's 36 weeks. You got plenty of opportunities to do it.
Yeah, you never know. I might be scaling back my participation. I'm not a huge fanatic of the Gen 4 car, and I'm not a super fan of really long seasons. But if I'm interested in a race, I'll definitely show up. I'll definitely try to add to the participation numbers when I can. But I think I'll just be mostly part time next season.
Fair enough. If nothing else, at least you'll be able to take home the title this season pretty much one way or another. Depending on how the math shakes out again, I don't have a damn clue how the math looks right now, but right now things are looking pretty good. For now, though, the microphone is all yours, Mr. Hess. Who do you want to thank for making everything happen in these past 10 weeks of competition?
Well, I want to thank you for putting on the broadcast. I want to thank Johnny and Jason and everyone else who runs ASRC. For the Bathurst 12, I want to thank Corey Logan and Tommy Reynolds. We had 12 hours of pain, but it was a lot of fun. Couldn't do an endurance race without them. And I would like to thank Team Watson Racing, great group of guys over there. And I think that's about it.
Good deal. Well, thank you for coming out here tonight. Congratulations on another podium to name, and good luck next week at Kansas.
Yes, sir. I'll see you around.
You heard it here first, race fans. Your top 3 finishers here this evening, but of course, that is not everyone who competed here in tonight's event. So how about we take a look down at our unofficial race results and see how the rest of the field shook up. Of course, your top 3 you just heard from Mike Moultrie Jr., Jason Gardner, and Garrett Hess. Your top 3. That's going to be Derek Murphy in that 78, bringing it home back in position number 4, with rookie driver and pole sitter here tonight in that number 77. That's going to be, 97 of Jarrett Bolliard, bringing home position number 5. 6th place could go back to that Beefy Motorsports Liquid Molly number 38 of Brandon Feeney, followed by the CZ Robotics 24 of Corey Logan. Michael Sparks going to be bringing it home back in 8th, followed by the 96 Budweiser entry of Charles Jettings. 10th place can go back to Nico Morelli, and then it's going to be Garrett Streets in the SM Racing Products number 15 machine, rounding out the tail end of the field here tonight. That said, race fans, that's just about all we got here from Bristol Motor Speedway here this evening. First time the league's ever been here. Heck of a race put on. When we head here next, it will be in the Gen 4 car with substantially more power than this ARCA car has, and it is bound to be quite an event. But of course, we still got a pretty long ways out to that, because of course, next season, 36 weeks of competition for these ASRC Oval Series drivers. But before we can get to that, next week, heading to Kansas for 150 miles to crown ourselves a champion here in season number 13. That said, though, thank you all for tuning in here into tonight's event, and we look forward to seeing y'all next week at Kansas. Have a good evening, race fans.